Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Trollhunters Tales of Arcadia. Okay, so this episode, Just Add Water, introduces us to a new monster. We get some other developments behind what's going on with Gunmar, because obviously in this season he's been more of a passive antagonist since his introduction. So he's been biding his time in the background. That's about all we need to know. But we do learn some new revelations about what his plan is. Ultimately the episode is about being introduced to a new monster, and also some setup for the episode after this. We'll get to that when we review it. But let's just say there's a couple of interesting moments in this episode that'll be a lot more clearly explained later. But in any case, the episode opens up, of course, with a kid and his father driving through Arcadia. And the father is, of course, hopelessly lost, and we also get a hint that he's suffering from a divorce, because we find out because his kid makes an offhand comment about how if their mom was there, if mom was there, they wouldn't have gotten lost, and of course the dad's like, we don't need mom, so it's implied that he's divorced. But in any case, it's at this point where he hits something in the middle of the road and results in a flat tire, and he proceeds to climb out. Is a little confused as to what exactly is he's run over, because one thing I mentioned a couple of episodes ago is that one of Gunmar's soldiers lost an arm after getting hit by a car, or at least I think I did. I don't remember, but yeah, one of the Gunmar soldiers lost an arm after getting hit by a car, and the end result is that the dad now found the arm. And he of course is bewildered about the fact that he ran it over. Has no idea where it came from, but obviously noting how specifically unusual it is, he wonders if it's worth something and decides to put it in the trunk before getting out the jack to fix the tires. And while he's doing that, his kid sees something. We don't get a clear look of what he sees until the end of the episode, but there's this very oddly there's just a slurping sound as he looks around and hears the slurping slushing, and his dad's trench coat and fedora suddenly go missing. And of course the kid is looking around in panic because he's realizing something else is there beside himself and his dad. He doesn't fully understand. His dad remains oblivious throughout the entire time he fixes the tire. But we do eventually see a strange something in a trench coat. We don't get a good look of what it is, but it's clear that whatever's going on, it has full intentions of doing something related to the troll arm, because it's clear that the only reason it's around is because of the troll arm. So of course the dad gets back in. They proceed to drive off in toward Arcadia. Well, this thing that we don't get a good look at proceeds to stand menacingly in the frame of the shot. Meanwhile, we are introduced to the main plot of the episode. That it essentially cuts to after the intro. It cuts to the health class. It cuts to Coach Lawrence's health class, and obviously we've already established that Coach Lawrence isn't all too great about the whole health thing, but actually I think he is qualified to teach health, but everything else, no. He is the substitute teacher, but he is teaching a health class. In any case, he's teaching a health class a bunch of kids, and explains the assignment, which is that they all have to take care of a sack of flour. And of course, everybody has different reactions. Of course, he goes on to explain that, and whoever's sitting next to who is who they're going to be partnered with. Of course, Claire and Jim are immediately partnered together because they are the quote-unquote perfect couple. So obviously, as explained later in the episode, but obviously they take the entire idea of being parents in stride and are happy to raise a sack of flour. And of course, we also find out that Toby admits it's a piece of cake. Claims it's a piece of cake, to which Coach Lawrence responds, "Do not eat it." And of course, he proceeds to hand Toby and Darcy a sack of flour, and Darcy is nervous because she admits that she's not doing great at classes and she needs to pass health. So for that reason, she explains that it's very important that she and Toby take care of the sack of flowers as best as they can. And of course, Toby admits that he is more than up to the task. Although Toby is established to be, a bit of a klutz in this episode specifically. So in previous episodes, yes, it was implied that he was a bit of a klutz. It comes out full force here, and that of course does not put Darcy's entire thing at rest. And and adding further to that is that right around the time where Coach Lawrence says that in order to make sure that everybody keeps track of who they're supposed to be, and who is in charge of which sacks of flour, he gives them all a marker and asks them to draw a face on it. And of course, it's this point where as Toby is drawing the flour, the face on his and Darcy's sack of flour, Steve comes into the class and is visibly rattled. He's obviously seen something and is obviously struggling to kind of figure out what exactly it is he's seen. And he first and foremost, he apologizes, pointing out that what's been happening has been things were weird this morning. But of course, George Lawrence then merely responds that it's going to be even weirder because he's going to be partnered with Eli Pepperjack. And of course, the two of them are visibly shocked at this, but it does wind up playing an important role in the next episode. We'll get to that. But in case, the reason I bring up Steve is that he comes into the room as they're doing the decorating, which only further adds to Darcy's case that she should be worried about Toby being, a father, because in the process, Steve accidentally shoves Toby into the sack of flour as he's drawing the face on it, and Toby accidentally punctures a hole in it. But in any case, and of course he proceeds to do a bit of sleight of hand magic to fix it up. And the end result is that Darcy, Toby, Claire, and Jim. Well, Jim comes later, but we'll get to that. But in case, we are introduced to each of their sacks of flour. We are introduced to Sir Isaac Gluten, who is in fact to Toby and Darcy's quote unquote kid. So of course the entire premise of that is that they now have to raise a quote unquote kid together for a health assignment. I have never actually done this because I wasn't in the class for that, but I've heard that it's a thing and is commonly used as a thing. So apparently this was a thing at some point. I've just never done it. Like when I was in high school, we never did this. So and of course at this point where we find out that Mary, her team already lost their sack of flour. As it turns out, they decided to give it a bath like a pair of idiots. And flour does not do great in water, so you can probably understand what happened. So, but in case at this point where Darcy points out that she's not particularly worried about Toby about Claire and Jim passing, because obviously, as she admits, they are the perfect couple, and she is not particularly worried about them failing. Meanwhile, she's a little bit more worried because Toby is obviously, we've already established, Toby's a bit of a klutz. He's not super careful. So, and case in point, his main weapon of choice is a warhammer. Obviously, he's not particularly concerned with grace and being careful in battles as well. So that's kind of an established part of his character. But of course, at this point where Jim, of course, comes in on his Vespa, and we find out that he actually did not put a helmet on their little baby, which of course Claire gives him an earful for when he comes in. And we also find out that they aren't really sure of what name to give their baby. Jim, of course, wanted to name it after himself because he's named after his father. He figured he would name his own child after himself. So, and of course Claire does object to this, pointing out that obviously that they decided to name their little sack of flour Petunia, because she's a flower, which of course is amusing and funny. But in case it's at this point where Toby then admits that he would like to bring their baby to a rock show if that would be okay, which of course Darcy admits she misunderstands. She believes he wants to bring the baby to a rock concert, but of course Toby proceeds to clarify, revealing that no, actually Arcadia is having an actual geology exhibit at the museum, and that he has been trying to get his collection appraised for the longest time, which is why he's decided to go. Case in point, he pulls out a series of various gemstones, but including a piece of Bular, which he has to play off on the fact isn't actually a piece of Bular, but is actually some sort of rare gemstone that he found. But of course, it's a bunch of bullcrap because we know where it's really from. But Darcy buys it and he proceeds to shove it back into his bag. But in case, it is at this point where Darcy then proceeds to get a text message on her phone, and it's revealed that she actually has to mask on a game that night because, as we find out, the hacky sack, for whatever reason, Arcadia High has a hacky sack team, and apparently they're good enough that they were able to get to the quote-unquote finals. So for some reason they have one. But she admits that because of that she has to mascot for the night and asks Toby if he'll be okay by himself. And of course he admits that he's got it and that she has nothing to worry about. In case in point, he proceeds to slip, fall on his ass, and manages to catch their baby regardless. So he admits that yes, she has nothing to worry about. And of course, Darcy, after seeing this as they leave the diner, does admit that maybe she should take it with her and find some place for it inside her mascot costume. But Toby reassures her, telling her that no, she doesn't have to worry about any of that. He will take full care of it, take full responsibility of it, and she does not have to worry about failing her class as long as he's on the job. Which, of course, she's not reassured, considering that Toby, has dropped their baby once and has already given it a pirate look. But ultimately, she relents and decides to goes to her match goes to mascot the match while Toby, Claire, and Jim then proceed to walk home, and Claire at this point then proceeds to reminisce about how they're probably going to be parents someday. Which, of course, Jim gives her a bit of side-eye and a bit of a bewildered look, but she admits that he knows what she means, and pointing out that one day they will have to raise teenagers, and admits that she hopes that she'll be a better parent than her own parents are, because as we find out, her parents aren't the best. We find out that the main issue her parents have is that they constantly forget her birthday. To the point where it has to be written down on her mom's schedule because of how busy she is. If she doesn't have it written down, she's not going to remember it. Meanwhile, Jim admits that he obviously understands where she's coming from, pointing out that obviously we know his dad walked out on him, so not great track record there. But also he admits that the closest thing he sort of had to a father was Strickler, and as we found out, Strickler was a changeling, tried to kill him, so obviously, also not a great track record there. So, pretty much the only father figure he has in his life is Blinky, who more serves as his guide than anything else. But, and of course, at this point where Claire asks Toby if he has any memories about his parents, but of course we find out that Toby actually not only never met his parents, but also only knows stories from when his nana has told him. As we find out, or at least according to Nancy, we find out that when Toby was 2 years old, his parents won the lottery and were very much surprised, and wasn't like a lot, but it was enough for it to be like a substantial amount of money. And of course they decided to celebrate by taking a cruise trip around the world. And then we find out that there was a storm, and then they never came back. So unfortunately, Toby lost his parents at sea and has not seen them since. So this of course causes Claire to realize that she probably shouldn't have been reminiscing about their parents, because she realized that she was bringing back a painful memory for Toby. But Toby admits that it's fine and that doesn't really bother him because he wasn't, old enough to remember. But does point out that whenever good things happen to him, he likes to think that his parents are looking out for him. So for that reason, and then at which point we see a twinkle in the sky. And of course, we do find out that Toby is. In case after this they decide to part ways and go home, at which point Toby starts bringing his sack of flour in a wagon that I should mention just had on him, but he starts bringing it home, and he's whistling and singing to himself, when suddenly he feels something is following him. He, of course, has no idea what's going on, but becomes increasingly more rattled, and eventually, as he's about to get home, he finally decides he's had enough and pulls out his warhammer and tries to confront the thing that's trying to attack him. And of course, we get to this point where we once again run into Mr. Trenchcoat again. So, at which point they hear him. At which point, of course, Toby, Claire, and Jim, who are obviously on their way back to Jim's house to drop off their sack of flour, hear Toby screaming, and immediately rush to his aid. They immediately play a game. They kind of play a game of tag with it to kind of hand off the baby. But they summon the respective weapons, try to fight the creature and wonder what exactly it is. Noting that, but quickly note that they can't really hurt it because it's just this weird slimy thing that just is able to reform itself for any time it wants. And it of course causes Jim to realize that they're outmatched, and eventually it does manage to attack Toby. But then it's revealed that it's not actually going for Toby himself. As it turns out, it is actually going after his rock collection, which of course causes Jim to wonder what exactly is going on. But Claire admits that they'll definitely need to figure out they'll definitely need to talk to Blink about it later. But for right now, they'll need to just kill it. But as they're about to, they suddenly see a van coming past, and they immediately desummon their weapons to kind of hide them. At which point we see Eli and Steve with a very scared look on their face. At which point they drive off, and they of course wonder if they saw anything. But in the meantime, as Jim and his group are wondering about that, the creature escaped into the sewer with its trench coat and hat. So of course they're very visibly confused as to what happened, but quickly realize they need to get to Blinky. Fortunately, Blinky is at Jim's house, and he is currently playing some sort of role-playing strategy game that is very supposed to be D&D, but not. And they of course are talking, very loudly. He's playing with Droll and Arg, who are talking very loud and a very aggressive strategy for the game. And that becomes important later. We'll get to that. Well, that becomes important next episode. We'll get to that. But in any case, as they're talking strategy, they hear Jim come downstairs, and while Blinky muses that it's a very amusing game. But of course, at this point, immediately Blinky first and foremost asks him what's the matter, but also does take note of the fact that Toby and Jim are carrying sacks of flour, and wonders if they're preparing for a shortage. But of course, Jim proceeds to explain that it's actually an assignment, pretending that it's supposed to be their quote-unquote baby. At which point Blinky muses that this is most likely where the expression "bun in the oven" comes from. Which of course Claire is doesn't really know how to object to that point, but also proceeds to explain that they ran into some weird sludge thing. Which of course they admit they don't really. Blinky admits that it's weird that they're encountering something like this, but he's not entirely sure what they're talking about. But after a bit of explanation on Toby's end about how it ate his rock collection, it's this point where Blinky, Arg, and Droll know exactly what they're dealing with. At which point Blinky explains that what they encountered was most likely a gruesome, which, as he explains, is the carrion of troll kind. They appear when there's carnage or bloodshed on a battlefield involving trolls. Then they show up and eat the remains, and that's essentially all they do. Which and of course they were foreshadowed a lot. Because Blinky constantly uses it as an exclamation whenever he's upset, so or surprised. So they've been foreshadowed quite a bit up to this point. But in any case, at this point where Toby realizes that there might actually be a source of troll remains that it could be feasting on, because he quickly discovers that obviously it most likely went after the remains in his rock collection, and realizes that it's most likely souping up for the main course, revealing that the main exhibit at the rock show that they're planning to attend does in fact resemble a troll arm. And of course Blinky is able to positively identify it as a troll arm, And does of course, and it's at this point where we get a very humorous exchange where obviously Blinky is very visibly exasperated at how someone could be this irresponsible as to lose an arm. And then it immediately cuts to Droll, who sits there awkwardly for several seconds, and admits it's not his. And of course, it's at this point where Blinky, of course, admits that right now they need to, they know exactly where the gruesome is going to go, but they're going to need to secure some sort of device to deal with the creature. So for the time being, Jim is just going to have to, figure that out and deal with it later. But in case at this point where Arg hears something outside, goes to check, but doesn't see anything, and then immediately goes back to the game. So of course there's no, he doesn't fully understand what's going on, but just hears something. But in any case, it is at this point where we then get a cutaway to Gunmar in the Janus Order base, and he is currently watching Otto is attempting to get him to watch an infomercial about the world of humans, and as filmed by Strickler, and of course, obviously, Gunmar has no idea what film projectors are. So he's just very concerned as to how Strickler suddenly got so big, and of course at this point where obviously Otto explains that it's just a projection and it's meant to inform him about the world. But of course, after watching it for a minute, he admits that while he's seen that he's watching the infomercial, he admits that while he knows he can understand that the world has changed, his plan remains unaltered, and admits that proceeds to ask Otto why the Heartstone isn't already his. At which point Otto explains what their ultimate plan is. That he just needs to be patient, but essentially, he explains that they have a spy in Troll Market, and which is the big revelation of this episode. That somebody in Troll Market isn't who they seem to be, and is making preparations for Gunmar to take over and absorb the Heartstone and gain its power for himself. So, for the time being, he just needs to be patient until they're able to grease the wheels for that. And of course, Gunmar agrees, but then it's at this point where Otto then proceeds to try and turn Gunmar onto Dictatious. And the way he does this by explaining that as the advisor, he should be able to foresee things. But of course, due to what Blinky did, Dictatious can't see, period. So he can't, which of course causes Gunmar to initially believe that Dictatious has outlived his usefulness. But then we find out that actually, Dictatious then barges into the room claiming that while his brother has taken his eyes, she has blessed him with sight, which of course causes Otto to be very visibly confused, wondering how she was able to speak to him. And again, we don't get a hint as to who she is, but there's only one. We are getting a hint. We are getting close to figuring out who the actual antagonist of Trollhunters is. That'll be by the end of the season, going into the next one. She's important. She'll be important later. But in case, Gunmar then proceeds to ask Dictatious to tell him what he knows. But of course, it's at this point where we find out that in the meantime, we find out that Blinky has bought whatever refers to as a Dwok stone from Rock Guts. Which of course, and there's an extended bit where nobody knows how to pronounce it, and eventually Claire interrupts and asks how it works, and he just explains that the idea is to place it in the gruesome's body and then run, and then also points out that any sort of shaking will activate it. So he admits that for the time being they should keep it safe and secure as possible. So, Jim agreeing to do that then proceeds to go into the Roxo with Toby and Claire. And it's exactly what you would expect from how it's explained. It's a geology exhibit featuring various gemstones and other things, and obviously at the center of the room, and at the center of the chamber, is a massive troll arm. And of course, it's at this point where they try to talk to game strategy to try and figure out how to escape, to try and figure out how to best canvas the area and figure out where they're supposed to go and find the gruesome. But it's at this point where Darcy shows up, explaining that the match ended, and now she's there to spend some time with Toby and their baby. And of course, Toby tries to get her to go away, but when he realizes that is not going to work, he instead decides to do what she requests and spend some quality time with her. their quote-unquote baby, while Jim and Claire proceed to split up and go looking for the gruesome. And of course, Claire thinks she finds him at one point, but it turns out to just be a guy in a similar trench coat, and she accidentally insults him by calling him ugly, so she apologizes profusely, telling him that he's beautiful, at which point she leaves while the guy's very visibly confused. Meanwhile, Jim is currently stumbling around when he suddenly runs into Steve, who dumps something on him. And of course, Jim is very visibly confused as to what's going on and asks what the hell Steve just did. And Steve is obviously very visibly confused that whatever he dumped on Jim did not work, but then plays it off as the fact that Jim made him spill his energy drink, and that's and his protein shake, and then proceeds to wander off in a grumble. And of notice that Steve is wearing an unusual outfit. Again, that'll be important later. Well, later in the next episode, I mean. But it's at this point where Jim sees something slink off toward the bathroom, and realizing it's probably the gruesome because of how this quote-unquote person walks, he follows it inside and immediately dons his armor. And it's at this point where he admits that he knows the gruesome is hungry. Gruesome is hungry, but that it's his job to protect Troll Market, to protect the world, and to protect Arcadia from threats like it. So he immediately goes into a thing where he starts kicking into installed doors to try and figure out where this creature is. And eventually, the gruesome does show itself, and we do finally get a good look at it. It is about what you'd expect. Is this weird thing made of yellow sludge that wears this trench coat, that had been wearing a trench coat to hide itself, and now it's confronting itself in its true form. But of course, Jim immediately gets into a fight, but we quickly discover that the gruesome, due to its more liquid shape, is able to slink in and out of the plumbing to fight Jim with. And this, of course, eventually causes a problem where it accidentally causes water to leak out of one of the faucets, and this almost damages Petunia, Jim and Claire's quote-unquote baby that they're supposed to take care of. So Jim, after fighting off the gruesome long enough, eventually places his quote-unquote baby in the sink where it'll be safe, at which point he prepares to shove the Dork Stone into the gruesome's body to defeat it. But in the process, the gruesome sees that coming from a mile away because it knows that the Dork Stone is there to kill it. So it reforms its body around Jim's arm. Jim accidentally throws the Dork Stone into the sink next to his flower baby. But of course, in the process, we discover that the gruesome does in fact have another weakness that Blinky isn't aware of. Obviously, Jim and Claire's baby gets quote-unquote gets completely vaporized, and flour just goes everywhere. But in the process, the gruesome starts hardening and immediately escapes down the drain. And which of course causes Jim to immediately wonder what's going on. And also there's a fun visual gag of a guy who's about to go to the bathroom, discovers something's going on in there and decides he doesn't need to go that bad. At which point Claire comes in pointing out she heard a noise, and after seeing all the flowers, she immediately understands what Jim did and is pissed. But Jim proceeds to explain that their child did not die in vain, and proceeds to go on to explain that the flower inside Petunia seemed to have weakened it, and admits that in order to defeat the gruesome, they're going to need more flour. But of course, Clara points out that the only flour they have is Toby's baby, and realizing they need to have Toby make a difficult choice, they proceed to call him on the walkie-talkie. And of course, Toby has no interest in doing this, finding out that obviously Darcy has explained repeatedly that she needs to get a good grade in this class, otherwise she's going to lose her mascoting position. But of course, they then proceed to explain to Toby that either that or she comes face to face with the gruesome. And of course, Toby realizing that it's a good point that she's not going to really want to have to explain a gruesome to her, does proceed to just take their baby and run. He admits that he doesn't really have a good explanation. He just grabs the baby, runs into the building, and the deputy judge proceeds to stop her from entering the building after him and closes the door before she can get inside. Meanwhile, Toby tries to sneak up on the gruesome. He of course is hesitant because he knows the gruesome is currently feeding on the troll arm because the fire, and nobody's around to stop it because the fire alarm has since gone off. But of course, it's this point where where of course Toby tries to sneak up on it, but then it's at this point where Jim accidentally tries to call Toby and ask if he's has an ID on the gruesome, and which causes to become alert to Toby's position. So Toby proceeds to just chuck his baby at the gruesome, and it seemingly explodes, and this causes the gruesome to harden, completely crystallize, and then explode. So, but of course, Toby is very happy about the fact that that it worked. But now Toby and Claire are happy that Jim and Claire are happy that Toby dealt with the gruesome. But then Toby admits that now he has to go break the news to Darcy. And of course, he comes outside. She's obviously annoyed that Toby just took their baby and ran off without an explanation. And of course, Toby's about to explain that he sacrificed their baby, but at this point it's revealed that he didn't actually have to. As it turns out, he comes into the Claire comes out 5 seconds later with Sir Isaac Luton, seemingly somehow completely unharmed. No explanation given, at least in this episode. We'll get to that. But of course, it's at this point where they hand off the quote unquote baby to Darcy. Explains that Toby was how fearlessly brave Toby is. His job was to immediately run in, find Sir Isaac Luton, save Sir Isaac Luton, hand it off to Claire, then run in and find Petunia. But unfortunately, as he claims that the sprinklers unfortunately got Petunia and there was no saving her, which is a lie but a believable one. And of course, Darcy, happy that Toby manned up and did something good. Does admit that she was wrong about him, and admits that he is a pretty reliable partner. And he proceeds to explain, ask if he's also a good kisser, but she tells him that it's one step at a time. At which point she leaves with their baby. Meanwhile, Jim comes out having taken off his armor and is visibly confused as to how Sir Isaac Luton can possibly be alive, pointing out that they thought it vaporized the gruesome. But of course, at this point, where the implication, where they all start to think that maybe Toby was right about good things happening and his parents are watching over him. And of course, Claire is being the more rational one, does point out that doesn't make any sense and there's got to be more to that, and pointing out that there's got to be some sort of logical explanation. And there is, but they don't figure that out. But Jim just proceeds to chalk up that it's been a weird day and that they should probably just, figure that out. Meanwhile, Coach Lawrence is visibly mortified that only one baby from the entire class survived and made it back in one piece. He's of course, very bewildered. Like he points out that he is very concerned for everybody else's skills at being parents, other than Toby and Darcy. And admits that he's not looking forward to any of them having kids, and he hopes that he's going to be long since retired by the time they get to high school. And with that, he dismisses class and leaves to go to just visibly disturbed. Meanwhile, Toby and Darcy are revealed to have, developed more as a couple, because, they obviously were struggling with that a little bit for a couple of episodes, but now they're a bit, better firmly established as a couple. Meanwhile, Jim, with the entire experience behind him, does admit that, when the time comes, he would be more than happy to be a dad, admitting that he did pretty good at it, for all things considered. And of course, Claire does point out that Jim blew up their baby, and of course, Jim admits that, yeah, he did do that. So, now first things first, we actually learn a bit more about Toby's family. Obviously, we know that he's lived with his nana. Obviously, not something happens, but and we also meet a gruesome, a creature that we have been waiting on in being introduced for the longest time. But and obviously, with the big revelation is that Gunmar has some sort of spy and troll market that is going to help him sneak in. Going to get to that because that's important. It's somebody you probably would not expect, but somebody I kind of hinted to if you were paying attention to some of the language I used to describe one of the characters that we've met already. So yeah, we'll get. I'm gonna hint to that. If you've seen Trollhunters, please don't spoil it. Well, actually, I'm watching this well after the fact, so I don't know. Do what you want. I may or may not restrict comments, but I don't like spoilers. So please refrain from spoilers. But yeah, if you've seen the episode, definitely please discuss. But definitely please happily discuss in the comments. But yeah, in any case, also this episode in general is just really fun, and I do enjoy it. But yeah, in any case, that's gonna do it for my review. What you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. I would appreciate that. It helps support me. You guys get access to, you know, whatever my musings or other things are on there. So please go check that out. Be sure to go and check out my Discord. I hang out on there sometimes, so please go check that out. I would appreciate that. Go and check out my Twitch. I stream Saturdays and Sundays over there as well as over here. The incentive here is that you get access to the end screens and stuff, but the incentive over there to follow me, other than to support me, is that we support other creators on there because of how Twitch is set up to work. So definitely go do that if you have not. Yeah, also, finally, speaking of which, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this video. Whereas the bottom video is the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new, or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both those videos out. And as always, if you want to support me, be sure to go check out Patreon, which is on the end screen as well. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!